Welcome to the Sun Today for the 19th of February 2025. The news headline for today is that we had a geomagnetic storm, albeit a relatively minor one, a G1 level storm. A quick summary of what has been going on. Solar activity in general has been decreasing. The sunspot number has dropped to about 120, as you can see from the plot on the right here from the Solar Influences data center in Belgium. There are no new sunspots regions emerging. Flare activity has been down. There's only 6 C flares, no M flares, and only 2 coronal mass ejections. The solar wind speed is also dropping down to about 450 kilometers per second. The consequence of all of this is that the magnetosphere has been left active until we got a G1 storm early this morning. Well, let's take a look at the sunspots. Some things I've changed here that might be helpful. We had 8 numbered regions today, no newly numbered regions. In the center of the image you'll see a little image of the Earth, and that's where the sub-Earth point is on the Sun. I've also added a coronal image behind the main optical image so we can see new regions appearing over the east limb. In fact, we have 2 of those at the moment showing up on the northeast part of the Sun. Those are likely the return of 3976 and 3977. We did lose 3994 over the limb yesterday. The area of sunspots was 1315 millionths. That's down slightly from the previous days. Well, let's take a look at our geomagnetic storm. On the left we have the KP index, which is a measure of how active the magnetosphere is. And you can see the 2 yellow bars there, which are the geomagnetic storm. One late yesterday and one early this morning. Since then things have calmed down. But it only got to KP index of 5, or a G1 level storm, so it was a very minor storm. The auroral arc looked more active than it has for several days, but then that has now changed back to more typical values. The solar wind is down to 450 kilometers per second, and its ion temperature is down to about 250,000 degrees. So that's again transition region temperatures, not coronal temperatures. So that's the likely origin of the solar wind that we're looking at the moment. That coronal hole that was plaguing us for several days is now over the southwest limb. You can just see a hint of it in a break in the coronal emission at about 4 o'clock on this image. There are 2 new coronal holes. There's a small one just east of the central meridian in the northern hemisphere, and that may or may not amount to anything. And there seems to be a somewhat larger one down in the southeast, just coming over the east limb. We'll have a look at that better in a few days' time when we can look right down on top of it. On the right we have the models of the solar wind. You can see that large orange area, and the bottom image is the high-speed solar winds that we've been dealing with the last few days, and you can see from their prediction that these winds are moderating over the next few days to more normal levels, like about 300 to 350 kilometers per second. Here are some images taken of the aurora that were caused by the geomagnetic storm. They're of course quite beautiful. Well, let's take a look at the flare situation. We had 6 C flares today. You can see them here. The largest one was right just before midnight. We had no M flares and no X flares, unfortunately, and the X-ray background at times has dropped to the equivalent to C1 level. Coronal mass ejection activity has been low. Only 2 CMEs recorded by SOHO today. You can see in the movie that I'm going to show you, the bright object, which is Mercury, moves off to the east, so now it is formally an evening star. And we're going to see the LASCO C2 plus the C3 movie. And we've not seen any comets for several days, which is quite disappointing. Well, let's take a stab at tomorrow's forecast. I suspect the sunspot number will keep dropping. Flare activity will be calming down. Solar winds is moderating, as we saw from the models, and there'll be no geomagnetic storms expected in the next couple of days. So a relatively quiet time overall. We can look a little bit further into the future using helioseismology. That's using the vibrations of the sun to image its far side. And you can see here the blue and yellow patches, which are areas of magnetic field on the far side of the sun, and they'll be moving from left to right. So in the next few days, we're not expecting anything particularly large, but in about a week's or so's time, we should be getting a very large patch of magnetic field coming back both north and south. So that'll be something to look forward to. Once again, thank you for listening. If you enjoy these videos, please pass them on to friends or neighbors or relations who you think might benefit from understanding more about how the sun works. And so until next time, stay safe and goodbye.